Hello, my name is Martin Karpeh, and I've had the distinct honor to serve you as the 25th President of the Society of Black Academic Surgeons. I can't properly express to you how humbled I am to serve as your President. This is an exceptional honor and an extreme highlight in my academic career. I had planned to address you in person, but due to the unprecedented and extraordinary circumstances surrounding the COVID-19 pandemic, the 30th Annual Scientific Assembly of SBAS has been canceled. I so appreciate your indulgence to accept my address by this video. I want to begin by thanking the Medical College of Wisconsin, the Chair of Surgery, Dr. Douglas Evans, the local program chair, Dr. Calicia Clark, for graciously agreeing to host the 30th Annual Scientific Assembly of this outstanding organization. I want to also acknowledge the outgoing program chair, Dr. Andre Campbell, and his entire committee for their extraordinary efforts to organize what would have been the largest scientific meeting to date, based on the number of abstracts submitted and accepted. A tremendous amount of work went into planning and organizing this meeting, which was ready to go right up until a month before our opening. Over the span of my career, I've been inspired, both directly and indirectly, by many of the past presidents of SBAS, and to be named as president was not something that I could have imagined. I can recall Dr. LaSalle de la Fall, the past president of SBAS, became president of the American College of Surgeons the year that I was inducted as a fellow into the college. He was the first African American to assume the mantle of president of the ACS, and I remember being awestruck as he delivered his entire speech from memory. The depth and breadth of his intellect was frankly intimidating, while at the same time it fueled a sense of pride in the recognition that he was one of us. Now, unlike most past presidents, I've not had a long history with SBAS, and I honestly could never have imagined being in this position. I first became aware of SBAS back in 1990 when I was a surgical oncology fellow at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center. I had the opportunity to be introduced to Dr. Claude Organ, a past president of SBAS, by his son Greg Organ, and Dr. Henry Ford, another past president of SBAS. Both were surgical residents at New York Hospital Weill Cornell at the time. Just a year earlier, in 1989, Dr. Organ, Dr. Anye Ekwari, Dr. Arthur Fleming, and other leading black surgeons had formed the Society of Black Academic Surgeons and held the inaugural meeting at Duke University. I was quite inspired by Dr. Organ and felt tremendous pride learning that he was the first African American to chair a department of surgery at a predominantly white medical school. Frankly, at this point in time, I didn't feel I had done enough to become a member of SBAS. In the spring of 1991, I was offered what I felt was arguably the best job in America for a surgical oncologist. I began my career as an attending surgeon at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center on the gastric and mixed tumor service. I rapidly became consumed with developing my academic career and trying to fit into the local culture of the Upper East Side of Manhattan. I was the second black surgeon in the department, following my good friend, the late Walter Jones, who was the senior surgeon in the Division of Gynecologic Oncology. I'm forever indebted to Dr. Jones for his constant encouragement and for the outstanding example of professionalism and self-pride that he set for me and all the black and underrepresented minorities that followed. In many ways, I feel my path into academia was not unique, as there are a number of black and underrepresented minorities trying to navigate their way through a different culture while learning what it takes to be successful. I was fortunate that my boss, mentor, and eventual friend, Sir Murray F. Brennan, served as a guiding light into academia. Dr. Brennan's expectations were high, and my drive to meet them served me well. He helped me to develop the tools to become the best surgical oncologist that I could be, and for that, I can't thank him enough. I would like to share with you some of the lessons learned on my academic journey that I hope you'll find instructive. First is to believe in yourself. That might sound self-evident, but being the only African American or underrepresented minority in a majority department can make one feel less than. There's a tremendous desire to get it right on the first try and to prove that you belong. When I say believe in yourself, I'm not talking about arrogance. I'm talking about having the freedom to express the thought or question that you might have in the back of your mind. Know that expressing your thoughts is a good thing. Pursuit of perfection can turn out to be a burden. Don't be afraid of failure. As an underrepresented minority, we often are told that we have to do better. Embedded in that statement is a pressure to be perfect. Most of the major breakthroughs in medicine were not achieved on the first go-round. So having the freedom to express your thoughts is liberating, and it's a right that you deserve. I'm reminded of the story of how James D. Watson and Francis Crick pursued the discovery of the three-dimensional structure of DNA. They had a number of failed theories, and it wasn't until an informal meeting that Watson had with Maurice Wilkins, a British physicist who was also working on DNA. Wilkins showed an image created by X-ray crystallography to Watson that gave him the essential blueprint for the eventual description of the double helix. Another point of the story that is germane to my talk is that the X-ray was produced by Wilkins' female colleague, Rosalind Franklin. She was an English chemist, an X-ray crystallographer who used X-ray diffusion to try and illustrate the structure of DNA. She produced a number of failed images, but it was her famous image number 51 that most clearly showed the structure of DNA. Franklin was unaware that Wilkins had showed Watson the famous X-ray. Watson, Crick, and Wilkins went on to receive the Nobel Prize in Medicine in 1962. The sad part of the story is that Rosalind Franklin died in 1958 and was only posthumously recognized for her work. The point I'm making is that with hard work and dedication, don't be put off by failure. It's in many ways a privilege that many Black, underrepresented minorities and women don't give themselves, and it is inescapable in the path to success. The second lesson is to find your niche. Try to identify one or two things that interest you and learn all that you can about it. Having a niche gives you the opportunity to become an expert in the field and a reason that someone might be interested in your work. I had an interest in GI surgery and was fortunate to take over the development and maintenance of the gastric cancer database at Memorial Sloan Kettering. Gastric cancer was becoming less common in the United States, and this gave me a clear academic focus to specialize in. Developing a detailed prospective database led to a number of important observations. The concept of using neoadjuvant chemotherapy to treat gastric and GE junction cancers raised a number of important questions around safety and efficacy. I, along with the disease management team, were able to be among the first to show that surgery could be safely delayed without progression of disease while delivering chemotherapy. Chemotherapy did not negatively impact the technical aspects of surgery, and in fact, the R0 resection rates were actually improved. The 1990s also marked the advent of laparoscopy into the surgical armamentarium. I was in a unique position to investigate whether laparoscopy had a role in the management of gastric cancer. Our group was among the first to show that laparoscopy provided additional information in staging of gastric cancer over CT scanning alone. There were technical questions surrounding the safety and benefit of doing an extended lymph node dissection. This is less of an issue now, but it was hotly debated for years. Having a database of more than 1,000 Western patients was again unique, and it allowed us to show that the procedure could be done safely and that the prognostic information gained by counting the number of lymph nodes was superior to simply identifying their location. The disease-specific survival, when sorted by stage, was significantly influenced by the number of lymph nodes dissected and examined. This data was later used to support a major change in the T&M staging system. So having a unique area of interest helped to develop my academic career by giving me something to write, speak, and to teach about. The third, and I think the most valuable lesson, is to seek out a mentor. Mentors can also be sponsors, or they can influence others that will ultimately sponsor you. This point has been emphasized by nearly all the past presidents in their presidential addresses, but I think it bears repeating. I've been blessed to have had a number of outstanding mentors along the way. I can't name them all, but I want to acknowledge a few that helped me during key times in my career. After graduating from college, I spent 2 years in a research lab. I was concerned that the 2-year gap out of college would hurt my chances of getting into medical school. During the interviewing process, I met the late Dr. Alphonse Dupre, who was the Associate Dean for Academic Achievement and Professor Emeritus of Neural and Behavioral Sciences at Penn State Hershey College of Medicine. We had not met before my interview day, but it later became clear to me that he was an outspoken advocate and sponsored me into getting into Penn State. His encouragement and support along the way made all the difference in getting me through 4 years in Hershey, Pennsylvania, where I was one of 4 blacks in the class of 100 and the only black male. In fact, there were only 4 black males in the entire school. Later, as a surgical resident at Penn, I had a number of wonderful teachers and mentors, but I want to especially acknowledge Dr. John Daly, who set the example for me of what a true surgical oncologist could be. His ability to balance academic achievement, patient care, and his strong devotion to family was exemplary. Dr. Daly was another unsolicited sponsor that helped me in my quest for a surgical oncology fellowship. I thank Dr. Daly for his continued support throughout my career. I'd like to also acknowledge past President Danny Jacobs, who was my senior and chief resident at Penn. Dr. Jacobs set an example for all Penn residents that a black resident could be successful with hard work and determination. The fact that you are members of SBAS tells me that you do believe in yourselves. I encourage you to hold on to that. Having a niche area to work on is extremely helpful in academics, and to find that niche may mean looking outside of your department or even outside of surgery to find the topic that can be applied to clinical care. We all need mentors to help guidance and support, but we also need sponsors to advocate on our behalf. This is where SBAS is so valuable. SBAS provides a treasure trove of intellectual strength and academic achievement at every professional level. The power of networking and mentoring cannot be understated. One of the greatest disappointments of not having our annual meeting this year is missing out on the face-to-face encounters and the networking that happens every year. In fact, I can recall my reintroduction to SBAS happened when I ran into Dr. Fred Kaysen at the Society of Surgical Oncology meeting. He encouraged me to join SBAS, and I'm so pleased that he did. Reviewing the past year and thinking about the future of our society, I worry about the flattened growth curve of black and underrepresented minorities going into medicine. The data are clear that we have a pipeline problem, which I believe poses the greatest existential threat to SBAS as the pool of potential new members continues to shrink. Dr. William McDade, the Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer at the Accreditation Council for Graduate Medical Education, shared this slide. It illustrates the steady increase in the number of medical students entering residency. Over a 13-year period, the percentage of residents identified as African American remains unchanged at 5%. A large percentage of resident ethnic identity was entered as other or unknown. The other category showed the largest increase over time, which could represent underrepresented minorities, but we just don't know. Dr. McDade is working to get more detailed information to answer this question. Without addressing the pipeline leakage further upstream, these percentages are not likely to increase and may in fact decrease. The focus of SBAS has traditionally been on helping black and underrepresented minority residents, fellows, and young attending surgeons advance their careers, but it is clear that we need to try and exert some influence at the high school and college level. Programs like Snap the Gap in California are focused on 10 and 12-year-olds to improve attitudes and perceptions of science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and medicine. Snap the Gap is rooted in 3 activities: hands-on experiential learning using the STEM and Mentor Kit, providing access to mentors, and expanding learning opportunities by online learning platforms that provide hundreds of activities that participants can tackle after the formal program has been completed. SBAS members can get involved by establishing a volunteer mentoring program to pair mentors with 1 or 2 students in their own communities. This is just one example of how SBAS can stay within the mission while addressing a broader audience of future leaders. Getting Black students into graduate programs is vital to the future of SBAS, but closer to our mission is the issue of keeping residents and faculty in their positions once they're in them. Data from the ACGME showed that of the pool of residents who didn't complete their residency, Black residents were 6-fold more likely than white residents to be dismissed. Now, it's rare to witness overt racism, but we know from numerous publications that issues of microaggression and feelings of isolation among Black and underrepresented minority residents is real. A recent qualitative study from Yale, published in JAMA, found that residents described 3 major themes. 1, a daily barrage of microaggression and bias. 2nd, minority residents would be tasked as race or ethnic ambassadors. And number 3, challenges negotiating professional and personal identity while being seen as other. One can argue that life as a resident is challenging in its own right, so it isn't difficult to understand why attrition among Black and underrepresented minorities might be higher than their white counterparts. This year, SBAS has begun talking with Dr. McDade about ways that SBAS and the ACGME can work together to address this. These are complex issues that will require a multi-pronged approach, but I believe that SBAS is now primed and ready to take on this challenge. Building on the efforts made by our past presidents, this year we sought to strengthen our 12 committee structure. Each of the committee chairs have all created clear missions and goals to help SBAS achieve its mission. Through efforts led by Dr. Linda Barry, the chair of the Advocacy Committee, in partnership with the Health and Disparities Committee, the Young Surgeons Committee, and the Resident and Fellows Committee, we've begun to work on creating a toolbox to assist residents and young faculty to cope with the unique issues of being an underrepresented minority. By creating this toolbox and having SBAS work with the ACGME to more effectively raise awareness about the value of diversity and inclusion, we hope to improve the cultural environment that these residents and attendings find themselves in. The Membership and Medical Student Committee have been working together this year to bring Black and underrepresented minority students together from all across the country. It's encouraging to see that the number of Black women entering surgery has steadily increased and now, in fact, outnumber Black males. In spite of these strides, there is still no Black women chairs of surgery in America. The issue that Black women face in surgery are unique, but not dissimilar from the issues that they face in society as a whole. The Women in Surgery Committee of SBAS has been extremely active in bringing to light these issues and working on solutions. The committee is led by Dr. Cherise Berry, who recently published a call to action in the Annals of Surgery highlighting the paucity of African American female surgeons and scientists in chair positions. The committee is working on creating a speakers bureau to share with institutional members looking for expert grand round speakers. One clear strength of SBAS is the large number of talented and experienced Black female academic surgeons. The Women in Surgery Committee provides a forum to address the issues of minority women surgeons while working to advance their position in academic surgery. Another important focus of SBAS this year has been on developing effective strategies for utilizing social media and to use information technology to not only educate the public, but to remain relevant to our younger and more diverse members. The Informatics Committee, now led by Dr. Hope Jackson, has picked up on the years of substantial work done by Dr. Hassan Teta. We owe Dr. Teta a huge thank you for his personal efforts to build the IT infrastructure for SBAS. Dr. Jackson, working with Dr. Colin Martin, who chairs the Membership Committee, have added a new members platform to our website. We now have the ability to more easily connect with our members, not just at the annual meeting, but throughout the entire year. I hope that all members will go to the SBAS website, log in, and update their profile. Your profile will be used not only to communicate with you, but we will have a growing list of online member services that will be directed to you. Another challenge facing SBAS is the changing definition of what it means to be in academic medicine. For years, the pinnacle of academic achievement was to become the triple threat: a surgeon that maintained a productive lab, had an active clinical practice, and was regarded as an outstanding teacher. The reality of attaining this lofty goal is much more difficult to achieve and may be vanishing. The shrinking availability of NIH funding has made it more difficult for young investigators to get grants, placing negative pressure on academic pursuits. One consequence is the number of surgeons applying for grants has decreased. A recent online survey was distributed to over 2,500 members of the Association of Academic Surgery and the Society of University Surgeons to determine factors impacting success. The NIH data revealed a 27% decline in the proportion of NIH funding to surgical departments relative to the total NIH funding from 2007 to 2014. This is an alarming trend, since surgeons throughout history have made significant contributions to medical science. Translational research needs surgeons. Over the past 2 decades, we have witnessed the impact of market forces on academic medicine. The amalgamation of numerous established academic centers into a single large health system, for example, here in New York, 2 independent Ivy League medical schools, Weill Cornell and Columbia College of Physicians and Surgeons, have combined to form New York Presbyterian Hospital System, an unlikely union that formed out of pressure to meet economic demands. The United States health system has placed a premium on size and the control of market share. Most health systems depend on the success of busy clinical departments like surgery to support their bottom line. Health systems have less motivation to encourage surgeons to do more research, so the value placed on clinical productivity often outshadows the academic mission. Compensation models have to an increasing degree been constructed to incentivize RVU production, and yet we know that higher volume does not necessarily equate to better quality, especially if the volume is not concentrated around a particular specialty. It's important that SBAS advocate for a more balanced approach, aligning clinical productivity with quality and outcome measures, which ultimately bring value to the care that we provide. The economic pressures placed on health systems are real, but with the emergence of bundle payments and a greater focus on providing valued care, we have an opportunity to change the status quo. By studying our clinical outcomes and working to better understand the critical interplay between the social determinants of care and the diseases that we treat, we can begin to move towards a more equitable delivery of care and, I believe, better outcomes. There are a number of Black and underrepresented minority surgeons working in socioeconomically challenged communities that are not members of SBAS. Many of their community hospitals have now become part of larger health systems. These community hospitals serve as training ground for medical students, residents, and fellows. SBAS, in my view, has an opportunity to embrace these clinicians, who often are eager to contribute to studies, but given the clinical and economic pressures, they aren't able to. Many of these surgeons started out in traditional academic departments and then left because of economic reasons. They now find themselves as part of a health system that has an academic mission, and the system needs their help to meet it. This new hybrid model of academic medicine is expanding, and SBAS can play an important role in asking the right questions, designing studies, and offering to assist in implementing these studies with the involvement of frontline surgeons who are eager to bring change to their communities in an evidence-based way. The SARS-CoV-2 pandemic has dramatically exposed how socioeconomic factors impact both health and disease. This is what many members of SBAS have written about for years. Ironically, This pandemic has brought the need for equity in healthcare into sharp focus. Poverty and disproportionate levels of healthcare is a general societal problem and not just a minority issue. If we're serious about improving public health, we need to put resources into eliminating the obvious inequities that affect communities of poor, Black, and underrepresented minorities. This pandemic is not an ethnic problem, yet the number of patients dying from COVID-19 are disproportionately Black and Hispanic. By not dealing with these social disparities in a meaningful way, all of society is affected. The United States spends more on health care than other high-income countries, and yet our outcomes are among the worst. The resources are here. The question is, where and how do we spend it? Now is the time to engage in efforts that result in true equity in healthcare. I've reached out to my local congressman, Representative Donald M. Payne Jr. of New Jersey, and offered to have SBAS partner with him, not only to argue for increased funding for socioeconomic research, but also to offer ways that appropriated money could be better spent to achieve a more meaningful outcome. Building on government relationships will help SBAS bring evidence-based solutions to key decision makers. I read an interesting perspective in the New England Journal entitled Bridging Polarization in Medicine, From Biology to Social Causes, by Drs. Katrina Armstrong and David Ash. They make an important point that there's a false dichotomy that is perpetuated in academic medicine between biologic and social sciences. That somehow biologic science is more valuable or more serious than social science. They warned, and I quote, that an exclusive focus on biologic pathways diverts attention from the profound and potentially remediable contribution of social factors such as poverty and discrimination to the disease incidence and outcomes. End quote. We need to continue to pursue a better understanding of the biologic mechanisms underlying disease, but we can't ignore the factors driving the incidence and progression of disease. There is hope that once the dust settles from this COVID pandemic, that efforts will be made to redirect funding away from models that focus only on biology or only on social determinants, and focus on models that take a more unified view of health. Moving forward, SBAS is well positioned to support research that is designed to bridge biologic and social investigations. As I begin the final part of my talk, I want to take a step back and reflect on how fortunate I've been to have a family that has nurtured and supported me throughout my entire career. I was blessed to have a mother who was born to Jamaican immigrants and was the first to graduate from college. She raised my two sisters and I entirely on her own. My father, who was from Liberia, West Africa, was a physician but never practiced in the United States. In my mind, he was a fictional figure that I imagined to be larger than life, and so I grew up wanting to be a doctor like him. My parents separated when I was 4 years old, and eventually they divorced. With my mother's guidance, love, and discipline, I made it through the pipeline to become a doctor. My sisters Enid and Marion are both lawyers, and even though they're younger, I look up to them for the people that they've become. We were raised to never say the word can't, and we're constantly reminded of the value of a good education. My mother was supported by her stepfather Merle Cooper, who dated my mother for 15 years until my youngest sister graduated from college and was on her own. He was a model husband, and my sisters and I will always love him for the man that he is. I was fortunate in residency to meet my wife Julie, whose love and support has kept me well grounded through residency, fellowship, and the trials and tribulations of my professional life. Thank you doesn't begin to capture the love and gratitude that I have for her. I was given the freedom to delve into my work, knowing that she had my back. We've been blessed with 3 successful children. My son Quinn, our daughters Chelsea and Ashley, are all self-sufficient, and I love them dearly. They have made my sacrifices worthwhile. In closing, I want to assure you that SBAS is structurally and financially secure. Our executive director, Dr. L.D. Britt, had a health scare this year, but thankfully he is fully recovered and back on the job. I wish to personally thank him for the support that he gave me during a particularly challenging period this year. The SBAS Foundation, established last year under past President Malcolm Brock, is growing nicely. This year, we took a major step to begin an annual golf outing to raise funding for Career Development Awards. These awards will be used to support young faculty starting out in their academic career. Unfortunately, due to the COVID pandemic, the outing has been postponed until the spring of 2021. I encourage all golfers and non-golfers to attend, so stay tuned for more information. I want to thank each of the members of the Executive Committee, in particular, Secretary Dr. Louise Marie Rodriguez, for her support and encouragement, Dr. Fumi Noriaku, past President Dr. Malcolm Brock, and President-elect Dr. Andre Hayes Jordan. I want to acknowledge the tremendous work of the Central Office and thank Molly Britton, Lovey Brown, and Sharita Henderson, who are truly the backbone of this organization. And finally, I want to thank you all for the tremendous honor to serve you as President. I'm excited by all that SBAS is doing and for the prospects of the future. Given the strength of the current membership, I sincerely feel that the future of SBAS is now. Thank you.